pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Trustee Gray?
Present.
Trustee Caprio?
Present.
Trustee Sweet?
Present.
Trustee Nancy-Petrosky?
Present.
Mayor Yukich?
Present.
Are they late or not?
They're not coming.
No, and no.
Thank you.
Okay. Are there any amendments to the agenda? I do have one. Is there a motion to amend the agenda to table item J5 so that we may further discuss the agenda item when the entire board is present?
Mr. Move.
Mr. Caprio,
Second.
Mr. Frankie, discussion. Madam Clerk, would you call the roll?
Trustee Caprio?
Aye.
Trustee Sweet?
Aye.
Trustee Nancy-Petrosky?
Aye.
Trustee Gray?
Aye.
Thank you. Is there a motion to approve the minutes of February 8, 2019 special village board meeting?
So moved.
Gray,
I'll second.
Caprio. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Ayes have it, the motion carries. Next, is there a motion to approve the minutes of February 27, 2019 village board meeting?
I so moved.
Trustee Sweet.
Second.
Trustee Gray. Discussion. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Proposed budget for fiscal year 2019 through 2020. This is a public hearing. The regular meeting will be in recess for the purposes of conducting a public hearing. Is there a motion to open the public hearing on the Village of Homer's fiscal year 2019 budget?
So moved.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Trustee Gray, Trustee Sweet. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say nay. Ayes have it. The public hearing on the proposed fiscal year 2019-2020 budget is open for comments. The public hearing is designed to allow residents to state their opinions and/or concerns. It is not a question and answer session. Given that, is there anyone that wishes to comment on the village's proposed budget? Is there a motion to close public hearing on the Village of Homer Glen fiscal year 2019-2020 budget?
I so moved.
Trustee Caprio, is there a second?
Second.
That was a tie.
That was a tie.
Sweet.
Trustee Sweet.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. The public hearing is adjourned. The meeting will be called back into order. Reports and communications from mayor and other officers. Start it off. As your mayor, I will deliver the State of Village address at Heritage Corridor Business Alliance Luncheon next week, Tuesday, April 16th, at Donofrio's Banquets, located at 14447 West 159th Street in Homer Glen. The Alliance invites Homer area businesses and residents to attend. If you would like to attend the event, the Alliance will need to hear from you by noon tomorrow. Please phone the Alliance at 630-257-5997 by noon tomorrow if you wish to attend the State of the Village Address luncheon on April 16th. Second, Dialysis Care Center. The Dialysis Care Center is a multi-state international company with about 250 employees in the states of Illinois, Pennsylvania, Tennessee, Ohio, and Michigan. Dialysis Care Center originally opened a training center in Homer Glen in 2012. The company, with a mission to provide patient-centered care to those with end-stage chronic kidney disease in all communities, especially those in underserved areas, is experiencing significant growth. Needs water? Okay. No, sorry. In 2018, Dialysis Care Center chose Homer Glen to open their new corporate headquarters. company purchased the former Midwest Bank building on Bell Road, completed major improvements on the building, and opened in early January this year. Dialysis Care Center now provides 80 jobs in Homer Glen, and future growth and facility expansion is anticipated. Already nearby businesses and restaurants are benefiting from the infusion of new full-time workers in the area. A grand opening and ribbon cutting event with many dignitaries took place on April 5th. As leader in the dialysis care, the Village of Homer Glen is proud to have the Dialysis Care Center select Homer Glen for the state-of-the-art corporate offices. This is great news for the Village of Homer Glen and economic development. And the job they did on the building is second to none. A bunch of great people over there, so happy that they're here. We will go to the trustees, and we will start with Trustee Gray.
Thank you, Mayor. Just two things tonight. Just want to mention it is the middle of April. Weather's changing, obviously. We were running around shorts yesterday. We got snow today, possibly. So just remind the residents that weather sneaks up on us quickly around here to heed the sirens if you hear them and have a plan in place. And also wanted to mention that this is National Volunteer Appreciation Week, and I know that we all of our committees and everything rely on our volunteers as well as the rest of the village at large. So I just wanted to say thank you to all of our volunteers. And that concludes my report.
Thank you, Trustee Gray. Trustee Troiki.
And no report.
Thank you, Trustee Troiki. Trustee Suisse.
Thank you, Mayor. Reporting for the Environment Committee. The Homer Glen Community Cleanup Day is on Saturday, April 27th from 10 to 3 p.m. An information table and/or tent will be set up in the dual parking lot. You can pick up litter in the parks, along the trails, or around your neighborhood. More information will be available on Facebook under Homer Glen Community Cleanup. The Environment Committee has an opening for a new member. Please contact the village at 708-301-0632 for more information. Homer Glen was recently named the 2018 Tree City USA by the Arbor Day Foundation in honor of its commitment to effective urban forest management. Recognition creates a sense of community pride, whether through volunteer engagement or public education. On the subject of trees, the Big Tree Champion Contest has commenced. Applications can be found on the village website this year. This year's nominations must surpass the champions from 2018, which are also listed on the website. That concludes my report.
Thank you, Trustee Suisse, and then Trustee Gabrielle.
Yes, I'd like to report on the festival committee, but I'd like to first welcome Gary Freiling to our first board meeting. That's okay, I'm allowed to do it. I'm reporting on behalf of the 2019 Community Festival Committee. The festival is June 20th through June 23rd. Our plans continue to move forward with Heritage Park. We have 7 food vendors this year, opposed to 6 from last year. The lineup of the bands is set for each night. Thursday, June 20th is the fireworks night with no rain date needed, we hope. Let's pray on that. Friday, June 21st is Special Needs Day, still in the planning process from 2:30 to 4:30 for those Homer residents and their children with special needs. We have many sponsors who have joined, new sponsors who have joined this year. We look forward to having more. Mega passes and wristbands will be sold at the Village Hall. You can contact the Village Hall at 708-301-0632 for more information. Always looking for volunteers, adult and youth volunteers. You can contact again the Village Hall. Also, the Township Road District will take those calls and get them to the right people. The Township's number is 708-301-0246. This can really help the young volunteers who are looking to earn service hours, and we continue to work on homerfest.com. We have the site up. We have another site that we're looking at implementing, and we're still on social media. If there's any questions, the Village Hall will have any answers that you might want for the 2019 Homerfest. So we look forward to having a great event out here at Heritage Park, and we hope that you can all join us. Thank you, and that will conclude my report.
Thank you, Trustee Gabrielle. Very down the list then. That's okay. Madam Clerk, do you have anything?
No, thank you.
Village Attorney?
I have no report.
Public safety officials?
Just real quick,
Good. 3 minutes. We got 3 minutes.
starting now.
Don't welcome the village manager. You'll be in trouble.
just a reminder to the village, or the residents, I should say, keep your vehicles locked at night. We do our best to patrol in the overnight hours, but the biggest deterrent for these criminals is just keeping your vehicles locked. In addition, with the nicer weather coming, it doesn't seem like it right now, but people tend to increase their speeds, so it's just a reminder to the residents, when you're driving places, just pay attention to how fast you're going. We do traffic enforcement throughout the year, but it seems like in the spring, as soon as that nice weather comes through the neighborhoods, people start flying. If you have teenagers, remind them, slow it down. And that's the end of my report. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Administrative analyst?
Thank you, Mayor. I'm just reporting on behalf of the construction team for the Active Core project. Last week we met again to get an update on the progress. Unfortunately, we're still kind of at the mercy of the asphalt plants. Integral has been reaching out to asphalt plants to get an estimated date for the asphalt plants to open so that we can start with paving for the courts and paths that are still remaining on the project. Due to the inconsistent weather, we don't have an exact date on that yet. But in the meantime, Integral is still out there working on site furnishings like benches and garbage cans, and also installing some plantings like perennials and shrubs. So that progress is being made without the asphalt, and we will keep you updated as we get a better idea of the timeline moving forward.
Thank you. And now, I would like to introduce our new village manager, Carrie, which we were lucky enough to get to come to our village. And I know we're all going to be able to do wonderful things, and we're going to get a lot of things done quickly. And it will get a lot better for us, but I would, like I said, I can't tell you how happy I am that Carrie is with us right now. So I'll let you have a few words and come get back on with business.
Thank you very much for that welcome, Mr. Mayor and the trustees and staff and the community. I'm in day number 8, and it's been a great first week and a half. It's been a very busy week. I've attended a lot of meetings. I attended the Planning Commission. I attended some of the committee meetings, including Admin and Finance, the Environmental Committee, and the Community Economic Development Committee. I've had the opportunity to meet with each of the trustees individually, so I want to thank you for providing me with your insights and your guidance and just a helpful background information on Homer and the different projects that we're going to be working on. I'm very excited to be here. I'm very familiar with the area. I don't really have anything else to report because I've only been here 8 days. The only thing I would like to point out, and we are, I don't know if this is the appropriate place to do it or not, but we are considering moving the meeting, the next board meeting, to the 23rd on a Tuesday, and I have a committee of a whole at 6 o'clock as well. I know we talked to all the trustees about that, but just to let everyone know that we will be making that change. But staff has been very, very kind and very helpful, and so have all the trustees and the board. So thank you, and I'm looking forward to being here for a long time.
Mayor Jill. Thank you. All right, we're going to go to the consent agenda. Oh, we got public comment first. We already signed it. Yeah, I haven't seen it before. Okay. So I was okay. All matters listed under the consent agenda are considered routine by the village board and will be enacted by one motion.
Wait, you have to do I'm sorry.
Yeah, there's no one that's...
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Mayor, I'd like to pull I-12 and I-13 from the consent agenda. So we consider it separately.
I-12 and 13?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Finish reading first. Okay. Nick, all right. Is there a motion to approve the following items? So,
We need a motion to move 12 and 13 off the consent agenda.
right,
Do you have a motion?
Okay, so Who's going to second it?
I'll second.
Okay, any discussion on it? All in favor? All opposed? Okay, so 11 and 12 are going to be taken off.
12 and 13.
All right, I won't be reading this. All right. Is there a motion to approve the following items? 1, the accounts payable for the period of March 22nd, 2019 through April 11th, 2019, in the amount of $559,080.90. The professional planning services agreement from JDS Professional Services, Inc., in the amount not to exceed $6,000. A lease agreement with Peterson Properties for the use of EMA and cold storage rental space at 15757 Nico Drive, Unit 3, Homer, Glen, Illinois. A lease agreement with Peterson Properties for extra storage space for EMA special events and parks equipment at 15757 Nico Drive, Unit number 4, Homer, Glen. A bid proposal from D Construction for construction of the 151st Street Bike Trail.
That was on the,
Well, that's one.
No, it's J5 now.
yeah.
You pulled J5, not I5.
Oh, sorry,
This is I5.
sorry.
This is still in.
The bid proposal from D Construction for construction of the 151st Street Bike Trail from Eagle Ridge Drive to Heritage Circle within the village of Homer, Glen, in the amount of $93,741.95. The proposal from HR Green for construction engineering services for 151st Street Bike Trail from Eagle Ridge Drive to Heritage Circle within the village of Homer, Glen for a not to exceed amount of $8,585. Pay estimate number 6, Moss and Tyler Construction, Inc., for the Fitterman Creek Sanitary Sewer Project in the amount of $459,051.86. An intergovernmental agreement with Homer Township for use of the township property for public parking during the Homer Community Festival. And if you still want to talk about that, that's fine. The general fund transfer equal or less to the general fund surplus for fiscal year 2019 or $650,000 on April 30th, 2019 in the village's amended standard operating procedure number 2, the village's accounting fund guidelines. 10, the payment of a permit review fee from Illinois American Water Company for 159th Street Water Main Project in the amount of $30,091.25. And last, an extension of the contract with Lions Pinner Electric Company for an additional year for street lighting maintenance within the village of Homer, Glen in the amount of $33,099. So we've had the motion. Is there discussion on, you want to talk on any one of these?
We've already motioned about
Yeah.
same motion.
I'll second that, sorry.
Okay. Well, we had those, so we're going to do a roll call?
Sure.
Trustee Burke?
Aye.
Trustee Capper?
Aye.
Trustee Sweet?
Aye.
Trustee Nancy? Aye.
Too many ayes and J's. Okay. Okay, next, we have an appointment of Mike,
So we have 2 items from the consent agenda that will come off.
The two from the consent, 12 and 13, this will be addressed. He didn't table it, he just pulled it out.
They consider.
oh, okay, so, go ahead.
You want to do those on the whole buttons?
All business.
Well, if we just pull off of this week.
We do it now.
So we go ahead for 12 first.
To consider the approval of board minutes from December 18th, or
From
December
December 12, 2018.
I would ask that the table at this time, since I was not able to get my comments into you, so I apologize for that, my tardiness, so I would ask that be tabled so I can get my comments into the clerk.
Okay.
That's some. For a second.
All right, and then all of
Is there a motion, did you make an official motion?
I was kind of reading it too, so
Yeah,
yeah.
okay.
Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to table the minutes from December 12, 2018 until the next meeting.
I'll second.
right, so we make a motion, you second. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, that's fine, so we can table it, we'll bring it back after you make your changes. Then number 13, village board meeting minutes from February 13, 2019.
I just know that Beth Rogers is not here, and that was one of her minutes, or one of the meetings that she wanted to review. I know she said she hasn't had time to come back to listen to the recording for this one yet.
Okay, so we'll table that until,
Oh, yeah, that's my motion.
Motion to table?
Yeah.
I'll second.
okay, so discussion on that one. All right, so all in favor?
Aye.
All right, so both 12 and 13 are both tabled for this meeting, and once Beth gets back in town and she has time to go over them, and same thing with Keith, get your set, then we can bring them back to the board. So now, legislation and action items. Appointment of Mark Garring to the Community of Economic Development Committee. Is there a motion to appoint Mark Garring to the Community and Economic Development Committee?
So moved.
Trustee Greggy,
I'll second. Oh, sorry.
that's a tie.
You get trustee Sweets.
Trustee Sweet. Discussion?
Mark's a good guy. He's already on our Parks and Rec committee, right? So
Yes.
He does a
he
good
should also be
job.
he can also be a beacon for the rest of the village. Sign up for 2 committees.
And we have opening and environment too.
We got advertising. And Mark came to the meeting last night, so we got him up to speed with the Community and Economic Development Committee, so.
And he heads up our Talk It Up event.
And
So good addition to the
And the
committee.
Christmas event too.
Yeah.
You're going to be busy, Mark. Okay, Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Trustee Gray?
Aye.
Trustee Cabrio?
Aye.
Trustee Sweet?
Aye.
Trustee Nice-Peter?
Aye.
Motion carries. J2, Shorewood Home and Auto Inc., case number HG 1901-ASB. Is there a motion to approve ordinance number 19-012, an ordinance approving 1, a zoning code map amendment, 2, special use for outdoor sales and storage, 3, site plan approval with certain variances for certain real property located in the A2 Rural Residential District at 13639 West 159th Street, Homer Glen, Illinois, with the condition added that if the Illinois Department of Transportation, IDOT, requires changes to the 2 modified access points on 159th Street, the village will review these and changes administratively without asking the applicant to file an amendment to the site plan approval. It is also further conditioned that all outdoor storage areas and driveways shall be paved with asphalt. The zoning code variances are as follows. Reduce the required parking from 69 spaces to 54 spaces. Increase the allowable wall signs area from 156 square feet to 250 square feet. Increase the allowable ground signs area from 65 square feet to 91 square feet, and height from 10 feet to 10'8". And last, to allow the logo on the ground sign to be 25% of the total sign area. The exterior construction standards variance combines metal insulated panels, MIPs, with masonry in the design of the exterior storefront.
I so move.
That's
Trustee Gray, Trustee Cabrio. Discussion?
Is there a representative from Shorewood here? We have some questions.
Good evening, I'm Dave Mitchell. Is there other questions or?
Well, I was just, because you're asking for a variance for the wall signs from 156 to 250 square foot. Is that total on all, because it looks like 2 sides have the squares and we don't know, we haven't seen any drawings or anything what this is supposed to look like other than a, a square on
It's total on the south and the west side, which is the frontage, and the signage is going to be products that they sell there between Steel, Polaris, John Deere, and Honda. So it's a variety of signs of this nature. We just don't know what those are going to be yet, but it's going to be the products that they sell within the facility.
Okay, so those are block lettering? and-
They will meet the ordinance and be approved, obviously, by the village during permitting.
Okay.
But the total area that we're looking for is on the south and the west side, which is the frontage from both the 159th and then the cross access.
So south or north side?
Yeah, I was going to say.
I'm north, I'm sorry. North and west.
Nobody's going to see that.
Right. North and west, sorry.
Do you have an example of this, because we're kind of concerned that it doesn't look like a huge, pole barn or shed. What is this metal masonry panels look like?
It's
Do
a
you have a
metal,
sample?
yeah, it's a metal insulated panel, and as you can see from the 3D renderings, to keep it from looking like a pre-engineered metal building, it's kind of hard to see with everybody having their own monitors, but it's this north and west elevation, the top one that you see on the screen there, we've basically got a flat wall across there, and then on the west side, we've got a flat wall, so you don't see the sloped roof like you would typically see. Like, for example, the township maintenance building is a pre-engineered metal building, I think, and it's got the low pitch roof. But in this case, we're hiding that with those walls, and this is an example of the material. They come in 3.5 feet wide panels. We're going to use a 4-inch. Yeah, we're going to use a 4-inch piece of insulation. It's an R32. These are gasketed and fit together, so the seam that you see from the outside is basically that. And then this is a tough cast with kind of a textured finish, a lot like a dry-fit finish, a stucco finish, but that's essentially what you would see. So as you look at these renderings, those vertical lines in the panel is the extent of it. Not much different than precast. Actually, it's a finer line than precast because it's not caulked like precast is, but again, it's not your corrugated, flimsy metal panel.
It comes in different colors.
It comes in different colors, right.
And this is what we see here, because north
Both
and
the
west
orange and
The orange will be masonry, which will be, something of this nature. I'm sorry, it's the beige color on the renderings that are the panel. So
okay.
it'll be that combination.
That looks nice.
Yeah, that'll look very nice.
And then the north and west, you said, will have that
The
signage.
signage, correct. There will be the largest sign will be on the brown, the masonry section, and then there will be some signage along the front, and then as you turn, there will be some signage along the west above the glass area, which is their showroom.
is that the actual product, just not the size?
Oh, yeah, we're going to use a 4-inch, and then that is the MDCI metal span. Well, that's the other reason for it. First of all, it serves two purposes, because then on the inside you have a durable finish. And then it's light, so when you're spanning all this aluminum storefront and working with a metal building, from a structural standpoint, it's very advantageous. Show and tell?
Right, I've seen it, it's beautiful. It's going to look nice. What's the warranty on the finish? Like 10,
Off
15
the top of my head, I don't know what that warranty is, but this stuff's been around for 20 years, yeah. Right.
On the outdoor storage, which is requesting, because in a letter here to VJ from February 7th, it says we're requesting from 500 to 5,000 square feet for outdoor storage. Is that going to be located in different sections, or is that like in the back and then the front all over?
There's
How are you
outdoor
going to protect
sales.
all that equipment? How are you going to protect all that? With just fencing?
Yes, the outdoor sales is on the north side, in the front of the building. If you go back to that 3D image, it's kind of hard to see, but on that north elevation and then on the west elevation, we're going to have a wrought iron fence that'll be 6 foot high, so you've got the visual. That's where they'll have a lot of their product for sale and for viewing, on the outside. And then on the back of the building, which you can kind of see in the overall aerial view there, we will have a 6 foot high chain link that will have slats in it. But we will have storage, and that'll be customer storage that, is just equipment waiting to be worked on before it goes into the service area.
I have a question regarding the updated motion. I believe that one of the biggest updates to it was the asking that they don't have to come back for a change if IDOT shoots them down. Can you explain that to us?
Sure. So they do have two existing driveways, which they plan to widen them, and they made I guess the easternmost exit to one way. So if IDOT makes any modifications to those two entry points, we're just saying we can review administratively rather than coming back to the Plan Commission and the Village Board.
So is there any anticipation that the eastern entrance might go away? Because it looks like the one to the west is going to be shared with BI, is that correct?
Yeah, that we don't know yet. I mean, you know, maybe more.
We haven't heard back from IDOT on that. So the west entrance off of 159th will be right in and right out, and then that east entrance is just right out. And
Right,
again,
the only reason I ask is because it looks like the way it's kind of situated right now is that you have 3 or 6, I'm not really sure, spaces for commercial trucks. So it looks to me like it's a natural flow for it to come out on the east side and go right east.
correct. And if we run into issues with IDOT, what we would do is just loop that as you're heading south around the back of the building and then back north. Instead of running back to 159th, we would loop it back to that main
Front of the
access.
building?
Right.
And you have the room there to do that?
Correct.
And then your storage area that's up front with the chain link, or the wrought iron?
Yes, yeah, there's plenty of room there. That's our detention area. If we had to, we'd have to look into putting that underground and then having our drive over it. But
Would that change the exit off onto 159 on that western intersection? Would
No.
that make that any wider or anything to
no,
accommodate a truck?
we would keep that as is.
Okay. All right.
Okay, so those are the only changes that I know too, that you wouldn't have to go to planning commission if I had action. Are there any other questions? Madam Clerk, could you please call the roll?
Trustee Nancy Turkey?
Aye.
Trustee Sweet?
Aye.
Trustee Caprio?
Aye.
Trustee Gray?
Aye.
Welcome to the village.
Thank you.
Thank you. 3, is there a motion to approve an agreement between the Village of Homer Glen and Savoy Consulting Group for the professional and technical assistance in conjunction with the comprehensive plan and design guidelines update for the amount not to exceed $105,000? That's a move. Trustee Caprio?
Second.
Trustee Gray, discussion?
Yes, Mayor. I did, thank you. I did talk to the representative from Savoy. Thank you, Director BJ, for the introduction. I just felt a little left out, and I want to have, for these focus groups that are steering committee, there was a lot of committees mentioned here, but nothing about the environment committee. And I think that needs to be inserted. You know, we have Parks and Rec, and we have CED, and we have Plant. But I think to do a little balance act there, I think we need somebody from environment.
Yeah, that was something the consultant wasn't aware of it, so they actually promised to attend your tree preservation workshop. So we're going to actually start with the environment committee meeting.
Okay. And you'll let us know then, because I know like in May it says you have some start of steering committee meetings, so you let us know when I have a representative that would be available.
In fact, we're going to coordinate with the board to have a trustee liaison.
Or whether it's a EC member or somebody.
Any other discussion?
No, I'm happy to see this starting to go, because this is starting to bring to fruition some of the things we talked about in strategic planning, and start some of these balls rolling forward, so,
Yes, it's stagnant.
yes, so,
Okay.
glad to see that happen.
That actually, I think the whole board will appreciate this. All right, Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Trustee Gray?
Aye.
Trustee Caprio?
Aye.
Trustee Sweet?
Aye.
Trustee Nancy Turkey?
Aye.
Motion carries. Number 4, is there a motion to recommend approval of ordinance number 19-013, an ordinance amending section 220-839 of Chapter 220 of the Code of the Village of Homer, Glen pertaining to the keeping of farm animals. Need a motion?
That's
I'll second.
And trustee Trey. Discussion.
Well, let's do the number one, the chickens first. I think it needs to be in a much larger area, so I am not in favor of having this in residential lots from E1 to R5 at all. I think it needs to be an acreage, to look at acreage, or just keep it at that. That's my personal viewpoint on that.
I tend to agree. I think it needs to be larger lots to house these.
Oh, I definitely agree.
And when I think acreage is my mindset as well.
Well, my biggest concern is where I live right now, a subdivision over, there was a resident that had chicken coops. I listened to them chickens screaming all night because coyotes don't,
Well, and I don't want to cause animosity amongst neighbors. I think this causes a bigger issue than we realize. If you got 2.5, 3, 4, 5 acres, it's different.
It's even there, like, if you're going to, sometimes we have problems with coyotes. Sometimes they're just doing what they do. The problem is, there's a lot of residents here that have dogs, and they're small. And they can jump over these fences. And if you're bringing in more stuff for them to come after, we're going to have a lot more of the family pets disappearing.
And I really think if whatever we vote on here tonight, we also need to be mindful that it should be set with no variance opportunities.
Right.
I just think that it's going to cause for more commotion coming to the board that's unnecessary, and once we make our decision, it should be set, and future boards can change that if they choose to.
What's the rule now? There is nothing, so anybody anywhere can have it. So what would we do if Sharon's next door neighbor has 50 chickens running around? What do we do, make them get rid of the chickens?
Yes.
There are currently people who are not, they're out of, it's not that they're not in compliance.
Not in compliance, correct.
We don't have an ordinance to be out of compliance with, right? I mean, we don't allow them to have them other than on ag.
Right.
Oh, so that's what I mean.
Right.
So you can have them on agricultural.
Yeah.
On air.
I don't dislike chickens.
You're a chicken handler.
That's the problem. So, I mean, we can leave it just the way it is right now. It has to be agricultural property. But you also have to look at if you're letting it in some backyards, and sometimes neighbors don't talk to neighbors, and they're also going to be some chickens, or you get a rooster out there, and the next thing you know, you have everyone fighting.
Did we waive a demand on this?
We're gonna have a lot of orphan chickens out there now.
They
They're all
all
gonna come to Columbus Park.
Almost has a big farm.
Well,
Not enough chickens.
and to say, Mayor, to leave it the way it is right now, we only allow it on ag, but we have kind of a non-enforcement from the building, the code enforcement, is that correct, Joe?
We've had to stay on this
A stay.
particular subject until it could be, or been looked at further.
So are we going to let that stay, or are we going to continue to turn a blind eye?
What's the demand on this? Do we know the demand? How many people have come forward to say they want chickens?
I know a few households that have.
There's a number of them in the community, and there's a couple businesses that actually sell them in the community. We're not aware of all the people that currently have chickens, but we know they're out there.
Do you want to consider acre lots?
Actually, they're allowed by special use permit in U1 and E2. So they can get a special use permit right now for estate residential if they wanted to.
What's the minimum size on down to R2?
The R2 zoning would be
1 acre.
1 acre.
And R1?
R1 would be 60,000 square feet.
So it's like an acre and a half.
Yeah, so the estate residential, you're getting for 2.5 and 5 acres.
Are you thinking 1 acre, or? I was thinking 2.5 sounds like a great
I mean,
number.
when I lived on Road Cook,
2.5.
my neighbor had chickens, and we were acre lots. I never heard them, I never seen them. My dogs might have barked at them every now and then, but that, I mean, it didn't bother me, but I would just hate to see if people have acre lots or 5 acre lots or whatever, just because they're not zoned ag. I don't see why they can't have chicken. And insurance gave me the dirty eye, so,
What about, I like, if we kept it on ag, and we kept the special use for E1 and E2, and made it a special use for R1 and R2, special use. Because the special use by each case has to come before us, even if they're in R1 or R2. So they can still hit an acre or acre and a third, or acre and a half, acre and 2/3, but it would have to come before us as a special use, which would also, I believe, wouldn't that trigger notifying the neighbors?
Well, that would be fair.
Right, because then we get neighbor buy-in, and we can allow it in some of those zones that are a little bit larger lot size.
That's why I say, if we allow this, and they do it with the chickens, and they're not cooped to where they get not protected, and the coyotes do come in and they get one of the neighbor's dogs, we're gonna hear about that too.
See,
We're gonna
yeah,
hear a lot of it.
Isn't it written that we're requiring a coop, a structure for them?
We are. Yes.
We are requiring a structure.
If you look at the actual, they're going to, you gotta figure that.
Oh, yeah.
Catherine coming out every day.
When I let my little rat terrier out at 2 in the morning, I mean, she could be.
But you make sure you put them in the house, that doesn't mean they're not. Curious, just out of curiosity's sake. Not to bring up Boylan Park, but what do they do there?
Something to go off.
Well, I would say this is not unique to Homer Glen. This is actually something that we're seeing more and more across the entire, all communities. But in Orland Park, we do not allow them at all. You cannot have them at all.
They
They.
do not.
Sorry.
The only laws control the lights and the meters.
The only reason I say this, it's gonna be up to you, because I don't vote on it, but I just look at, for the people that I know that have called me that lost a dog to the coyotes, and then you're gonna allow the chickens to come in, it's going to bring them in more. So, it's just my opinion, everyone's got it.
people don't have chickens out at night. I mean, there are chickens out there in the day, they run around, lay some eggs, come back, right?
I don't know, I've never.
That's how it works, but I mean,
Can we consider these separately?
we are,
Well, I know we're debating them separately, but can we vote on it all at once, or can we vote on just?
I would just hate to say it's only ag. I would like to see maybe at least an acre for residents, at least, come on, Sharon.
Who's, this is Carl.
Well, if you do a 50-foot setback on each property line,
That's getting, that can get small.
that's too small.
that's the thing we gotta consider.
If I can make a suggestion, as you guys are discussing it tonight, and you can take notes, and then what I would recommend is instead of approving it tonight, that we bring it back so we can revise the language, so you'll know exactly what the language is that you're approving this.
The chicken survives another day.
Yeah, well, not necessarily, but we just want to make sure that we're not doing some knee-jerk, we're not sure exactly what we're approving tonight. So we can discuss it, we can discuss the bees and the chickens and everything, but I'd like to bring it back and have a final code change for you guys to review at the next meeting.
Sound good?
Sounds good to me.
I don't know.
But we do need
Like I
consensus.
said, my take would be that if we, on the chickens, ag, E1, E2, R1, R2, all is special use, obviously not ag is special use, but the E1, E2, R1, R2 is special use. That would be my preference.
Then at least lets all the neighbors know.
With notification, right?
Yes. That triggers it, especially if they
Yes,
the triggers.
You're still getting down to one.
I just want to make sure that's clear.
1 acre, but it would have to go as a notice out to the neighbors, so that if there is some pushback against that, they would have an opportunity to speak then, and we always take that very seriously when those neighbors come in, so.
But the thing is, we have an issue now because everybody's advertising little chickens all over the place, so that's why we wanted to get this
Right.
finalized.
You can advertise anything you want, this doesn't necessarily mean that you can have it in the village. You know, they can sell anything they want.
Oh, I know.
But the thing also is going to trigger once we go to another meeting or two, when we come to a final decision on this, is that this will tell code enforcement where to draw that line on what to go out and to stop.
I would also recommend that even if we do change it and allow for special use in those specific zoning districts, that we still keep all the other requirements that are in the proposed code change, in terms of how they have to be kept and all those rules and everything, so that as someone does come through for special use, they know what the rules will be, even if they're granted special use.
Absolutely.
Well, there's bigger fish to fry than code enforcement going on chickens.
We're talking about fish now too?
Had to throw that in there, sorry.
All right, so we're in agreement, we're going to look into this to find out what we can do and how we can do it. And I'd also like to get the opinion from the residents. I have no problem with Home Horizons here. Put it in there, let the people let us know.
Also, we need a consensus on the bees too, so.
So right now, from what I'm hearing from the board, is that we will go back and we'll take a look at revising the ordinance and the code. I didn't know what that was.
The chicken.
Sounds like getting that fish.
Mayor, I don't think we should advertise this, like, what do you guys want to do out there? I think we should just make a decision
I think that would be
and
easier.
move forward with it, because it's going to drive the building and the code inspectors and everybody crazy, because all this is happening now.
One thing I would add is, I understand, having spoken to staff, is that there's been a lot of research and a lot of public input provided also.
Yeah, we've had a number of committee meetings regarding this topic. They were publicized.
We just need to have a final decision from the board so that we can get the code written the way it is, and we'll bring it back in the next board meeting.
What were the comments from?
That's reflected in pretty much what we've come up with here as recommendations.
I'm fine with putting it.
And that's going through Plan Commission and environmental.
Tabling it. I'm not tabling it, but tabling it for future.
Trustee Suisse wants action.
Well, I don't know that we'll get action. I mean,
Well, is that causing your department's going to cause a headache until this is 2 weeks?
I mean, there's a stay on any enforcement right now.
Okay.
So I think the worst case scenario may be somebody who purchases chicks that turn into chickens. We'll have to get rid of them.
Okay. Yeah, because what are you,
It's bunny season anyhow, really. When Easter's coming up, it's bunny season.
when they
We
call,
don't have regular bunnies.
When someone would call us, we would say, we would recommend them not to purchase chickens at this point until a final decision is made by the board. I don't know if we get that many phone calls of people inquiring about chickens. Oh, we do, okay, we do. So we will maybe then that they need to hold off from purchasing them for 2 weeks.
well, can we, right now, as a board, agree that we're not going to allow it, at least in R4 and R5? That's 10,000, that's your subdivisions like Pebble Creek. R4 and R5 are way too small of a lot.
but I don't qualify.
In R3, yes, they do, according,
Not according to the plan.
Some can, well, you know,
Some
you have an
can, you have an
option,
option.
good. And nobody else around you might be able to. You should, having just a setback.
I think what Keith started is perfect. Because then you're on top of everything.
Just for clarification, right now, what the notes that I have written is that we're going to still allow May, and that we will allow it with a special use in E1 and E2.
In R1, R2.
In R1 and R2.
Because that's down to about an acre and 2/3 and an acre.
And then all the other provisions that are added, that are highlighted in your proposed code change, we'll keep those in there, and those will become the new rules for anyone who is approved via special use process public hearing. Chickens, this is just chickens.
Just chickens.
You're not going to go on bees.
The article, or some woman, it was in Japan, had bees living under her eyelids.
Okay, well, we're not going to allow that.
I'm trying not to think about it.
So, all right. So, is there,
Yes. Before the board starts discussing the bees, because they noticed the Plan Commission recommended beehive, you need to have 5 acres or more for a beehive. I personally think that's way too much property that you need. Yeah, but I do have, if Mr. Lobeck, he is a local resident who has been, has 40-some years of extensive experience and knowledge with beekeeping. So if you can, listen to him a little bit before we get some more insight on that. Thank you for coming.
Thank you. My name is John Lobeck, and and I've been raising bees now for 44 years here in Homer Glen, Homer Township area. When we reviewed the proposal for beekeeping at the Environment Committee meeting several months ago, there have been some changes after that from what we saw versus what the Planning Commission had suggested. One of the suggestions from the Planning Commission was that we increase the lot size to 5 acres. That, in my opinion, is probably a little bit too large. 2.5 acres was probably more than enough. And I would also like to suggest that we increase the setback from 50 to 75 feet and kind of balance out the smaller lot sizes. Because again, if you've got a rectangular lot, you're still going to be able, and maybe the lot's 500 by 200 feet, you'll still have plenty of variation for the 75-foot setback from any of the sides. The 5-acre lot really doesn't accomplish anything. From a standpoint of supporting the bees, a 2.5-acre lot is more than adequate for the flowers, the clovers, whatever you have available there. So again, really my two suggestions are just reducing the size of the lots to 2.5 acres and to increase the setback to 75 feet.
Okay.
Had you given those suggestions to the committees when this was being discussed? Because that's a pretty big departure from what initially went before planning, I believe, right? You advocating for 2.5 acres. I don't believe that was the minimum size before.
No, there was some discussion at the, I'm not a member of the Environment Committee.
No, I'm asking if you had given them any
No, this is the first time I saw that it would increase to 5 acres. I was not at the Planning Commission meeting when this was discussed. I know at the Environment Committee meeting they were talking about a lot smaller sizes, which were too small.
Right.
So
you do agree that we don't want 15,000-foot lots or 10,000 square foot lots having bees or having the ability to have bees.
I agree, because there's also the philosophy of supporting it. You go to a larger lot size, you have a tendency to keep the trees blooming, the flowers, the gardens, that sort of thing, which would support the actual beehives themselves. Also, what's nice in the proposal is that there would be some sort of wall that would kind of deviate the flight of the bees, because people worry about bees coming out of the hives and standing in front and getting stung or whatever. But if you've got some sort of vertical deviation to allow the bees to go up, which they normally do, it's a good suggestion, and it's found in several other proposals and ordinances in the area.
I'm not really fully understanding that wall. Are you saying that a wall around the lot?
There's a suggestion of a 4-foot
or just near the
height, so that the bees are not coming straight out, that they're being diverted.
So it's nearer to the hive, so it kind of deflects them as they're on their initial flight.
Correct, or further out towards the edges of the actual property itself, to keep it from straying across to the neighbors' properties in a direct line of flight at eye level or something like that.
This is going to sound like a strange question. Is there a limitation of how many hives/bees you can have?
Well, the recommendation was 2 hives. Which
I didn't see it, I'm sorry.
2 hives, I don't know that you can count the bees.
You can name them also.
You can name them too. Sorry, I missed this.
That's included here, including the 4-foot wall.
And to also let you know, my phone number's been at the village for about at least a decade, and I've been handling calls that have gone to the village about problems with bees and wasps and everything else, and I've been responding to those, so I have experience within the village taking care of some of those problems.
I'm afraid.
So, Director Caton, maybe you can help us with this one. What was the reasoning at the Planning Commission? Because I don't think we have those minutes.
Yeah, they were quite aware of this deflecting walls. That was a concern. They wanted 5 acres. So that's...
So what was it they initially reviewed? What was the minimum size that they initially reviewed that they changed up to 5 acres? Do you remember?
Trustee Gray, when we were at the Environment Committee, we did not talk lot size or acreage at all. And then the acreage came in through the Planning Commission. We had all the...
So the only thing that was initially...
The setbacks, right, and the fencing,
Okay. So that was what they initially... They basically went from anybody with a 100-foot wide lot, because you had to be 50 feet in on either side, would be dead in the middle of your yard, but, so they went from a 100-foot wide lot, well, not necessarily any depth, it's still I think 50 feet off the back, to 5 acres. But without their minutes or their discussion, do you remember why, what they felt? I mean, did they have any input at being at 2.5 acres? I do know we have Glen with us, who could help also.
Yeah, so the comment was that bees are not domesticated. Their concern was, they weren't aware of these reflecting walls. That was the main reason they had to cut off at 5 acres. So that was the main reason. Now that we know about these reflecting walls, we can go down to 2.5 acres.
Also, I think that obviously I wasn't at the public hearing, but I think they did have some residents that did show up and they did have concerns about it.
Yeah, there were 2 residents that showed up.
And what was their argument, or?
One of them actually, he has less than 5 acres. He wanted to go even lower, but they kind of drew the line at 5 acres.
So we have a resident who has beehive that has less than 5.
Less than 5 acres.
It wouldn't be, most of the research I've done is regarding the setbacks, because that seemed to be the theme of most of the resident research I did. Not the actual size of the lot, but more on setbacks.
Yeah, my only concern with doing just a strictly acreage, 2.5 acres, is that we have so many flag lots around the village. So you can easily have something that is not very wide, but is very deep, and hit those constraints of the acreage, and still kind of be in that quasi nuisance to a neighbor. So that's my sensitivity on that. So I personally, for my seat, I think I need more information before I can really, make a determination on that. I like the idea of going up in size, and I'm glad that the local bee expert has, kind of given us that latitude to say, maybe 5 is too much, but certainly a postage stamp lot is too small. So we know that there's agreement on some of those things. But I'm just a little more concerned because we address these flag lots so many times. It seems like they're always tripping us up at one stage or another. And I'm a little concerned about that. So I'd like to look a little further into some of the inventory of lots that we have that maybe are narrow, very long, that would comply and become a nuisance. So I'd like to be able to address those things when we do finally land on something with this.
So you're looking for a comfortable width and a comfortable depth?
Correct.
Well, the residents that came that had the questions, BJ, the one that said, that you said 2 residents showed up, and they have a smaller lot size than 5. I see a hand.
We are there.
Okay, so how many acres do they have?
We have a quarter acre lot.
I'm sorry?
We have a quarter of an acre lot.
Because of the setback requirements, that particular area wouldn't be allowed to have bees.
They wouldn't have these anyway, so I don't know why.
They couldn't meet the setback requirement.
So we've got 75 feet from the
I just didn't know if it
property.
was like 3 acres or something that somebody had a quarter.
Most of your denser subdivisions wouldn't, because of the setback requirements, wouldn't be allowed to have bees.
All right, so we're going to table it for now. We're going to look into dimension-wise, depth, width, figure out what's comfortable, and then, okay, and then just go from there. We can bring it back to the, so we're going to table number 4, and we're going to table number 4.
Or all of them. But the staff now has enough information or more information to go forward?
Yeah, we'll bring it back into you.
So it's a terrible motion.
Well, to address Trustee Gray's concerns, so if you do like a 3 acre, but then you have the setbacks larger, I mean, a flag lot would probably even, like if you have it's a 75-foot setback now.
50.
Well, 50 as it was proposed.
Right.
Yeah, but
But-
75.
Right, and again, I'm okay with that if we find that, I'd like to just look at some of the lots and say, what are these frontages? And really, that's something we need to address. What's the frontage of your lot? And the flag lot, is it the flag or is it the frontage, the street? What is, what I mean? If you're a flag, is it the flagpole line that abuts the street? Is that your frontage?
No, right?
Or is it where it flares out?
Yeah, where it flares out.
They go to the interior of the lot, not at the street,
Okay.
for the burn
Yeah,
cap.
the houses.
So you would still need to meet the setback requirements, which would
Right.
be difficult on a flag lot. I mean, typical like you're describing, a long driveway in a narrow lot, whatever the size, you'd still have to meet that setback requirement, say 75, 150 feet wide lot.
So, yes. And on most of those, they're still pretty good sized lots. They're shared driveways, you know? The lots are pretty good.
Right.
Let's just come up with a number so we have it, that if we pass this, it's all set.
So, but can I ask one more question, sorry? So if we come up with a number, and let's just say it's 2.5 acres, 75-foot setback, let's just say. And then we do have a lot that has less acreage, but there's nobody around them or certain circumstances. Is there any way that they could come in for, you know,
Variance?
a variance?
I think what Trustee Caprio was saying originally was that let's nail this thing down so people aren't, so we aren't constantly lowering that threshold.
Right. Plus, you know,
We're not lowering it for everybody, but everyone lives on different lots out here. I mean, not everybody lives in subdivisions. Some people have small lots, but everything's open around them. So, I mean, I would hate to say you can't have it just because your lot's small, but there's nothing around you.
But that can change.
What if this
Yeah,
is
but
Like I said, if it does change, then that changes, you know.
That could be a special use permit situation like you did with the chickens. If you want to allow that, we could bring back some suggestions on that.
Like you said, a small lot, what is a small lot? You're still gonna need 150 feet
with a
wide and separate something.
It's 75. Okay, so that's good. Board's table.
So I need to amend my motion to table.
Yes, for the, for all of us.
All right, so I'll amend my motion to table item number 4.
I think I seconded
In
it.
total.
Yeah. I'll amend my two.
Okay. All right, all in favor?
Aye.
We'll put this back next one. It's ready. Number 5 is tabled. Number 6, we're going to workshop items. Development Services Director Shel Moll. That's for permitting. Michael, that's all yours.
Thank you, Mayor. As part of the federal Environmental Protection Agency's Clean Water Act, municipalities and other governmental bodies meeting certain criteria are required to be part of it's a municipal separate storm sewer system permit program. So basically, that's where the MS4 designation comes from. Basically, what this is, the program is managed by the Illinois Environmental Protection Agency, which fulfills this role to comply with the federal mandates under the Clean Water Act. So basically, the Illinois Environmental Protection Agency has the oversight role because they are the federal agency, the Environmental Protection Agency. They are the federal agency that are charged with implementing the Clean Water Act. Recently, we've, at one of the last board meetings, we approved a new ordinance. It was the illicit discharge detection and elimination ordinance. That was one of the requirements for this MS4 permitting. I've asked Lower Garrison with HR Green to put together a little bit of a small presentation to kind of explain what the permitting requirement is, what it entails, what the village needs to do, those sorts of things. Basically, moving forward, what this is going to require the village to do. So,
all right, thank you, Mike. Everyone hear me? All right. All right. Well, good evening. As Mike said, today we're going to be talking about the NPDES permit that the village is now participating in. And Mike kind of touched on a few of these items already, but just in case you didn't catch on to it, the NPDES acronym stands for National Pollution Discharge Elimination System. I even have to kind of remember what that is every now and then. We're also talking about something called the MS4. As Mike said, this is Municipal Separate Storm Sewer System. So an M with 4 S's, MS4. And also, this permit discusses a lot of things, BMVs, the best management practices. When we're talking about stormwater, a lot of times people think that's a rain garden, a rain barrel, tile swale, things like that. Basically, things that are put in the ground to help with water quality. This permit looks at them more as behavioral, your behaviors, ways of enforcing ordinances and things of that nature. So, who has to participate in this? We now know that Homer Glen is participating. But it started out back in 1990 with what the Phase 1 NPDES permit was. This was only for very large communities, Rockford, Chicago were some of the ones in Illinois. And then in 2003, they came out with phase 2, which narrowed it down to smaller communities. They basically defined it at that point as anyone who was urbanized under the U.S. Census Bureau definition. The definition's up here, but as I said, long story short, Homer Glen is now participating. The next step is, well, how do you actually participate? Last year, we filed something called a Notice of Intent, an NOI. This is telling the Illinois Environmental Protection Agency, the EPA, that we want coverage under the permit that they have written. It's a general permit. It says if you meet these requirements, you're in. So that Notice of Intent says that this is what the village is going to do to maintain compliance with the permit. Most of these have to do with just, as Mike kind of mentioned, ordinance enforcement and village is doing a lot of document keeping. Really important that these ordinances, now that they're in place, are just continue to be maintained and enforced. And then the last thing that we have to do is each year on June 1st, we have to file an annual update to the EPA. This is a written document saying that when we filed the Notice of Intent, we were going to do these items. We did these items. If something didn't happen that year, you explain why it didn't occur and what you're going to do to improve the following year. Now, a lot of people ask, what is the real purpose for this? You know, I mean, why do we need to do this? Why do we need to care? And this is really why I think people can relate to this. Within the village of Homer Glen, there are 3 streams that are considered impaired waterways. We have Hickory Creek, Spring Creek, and Fittingman Creek. All of these have been identified as having something in them that has depleted the water quality, either for aquatic habitat or human contact, lots of different levels of impairment. But the thing is that there's something wrong with the streams, to varying degrees. One thing I like to point out in here is that all 3 of the impaired streams are impaired by phosphorus and sediment. So those are things that are very directly related to items that end up in our storm sewer systems. They're related to construction, and they're things that are generally preventable. So as the village, we can do some things to help reduce that and then improve our waterways. I mentioned the permit requires these 6 main levels of participation. These are called the minimum control measures. And I'm going to go through each of these 6 items relatively quickly to just give you a brief overview of what we're going to be doing here. The first is public education and outreach. So this is really a way of saying that we can't be upset with residents for doing things that they don't know are harmful. A lot of residents just simply don't know that the grates that are in the street go through pipes directly into our streams. It's very common thinking that if you dump something down the gutter drain, that it goes to a water treatment plant, it's cleaned somehow, and then it goes, may not know. I would say it's very common for people to tell me they just never really thought about where that went. But in the Notice of Intent, we said that we were going to do a few things to help educate the public. 3 of them are listed up here. Discuss stormwater pollution on the Facebook page, on the village's website, and in the mayor's blog, as well as put out some flyers here at the village hall. These are articles that can be found through the EPA. HR Green can provide a lot of examples from these, and we provide these to many other communities. But really they're just educational pieces saying, where do those storm drains in the street go? How should I fertilize my lawn? Where should I dispose of wastes XYZ? Things of that nature. The next minimum control measure is public participation and involvement. And the first thing that we said that we would do on here is that we would have a presentation at a village board meeting discussing the NPDES Phase 2 program. We're currently doing that, so I hope this makes it in minutes. So next year I can say, on this date, we're all good. All right. But I mean, we can do this more than once a year if you want. If certain topics come up, if there's an interest, we can provide more information for you. Another thing that we said that we would help out with, to varying degrees, is any type of volunteer program. Whether it be a stream cleanup, a park cleanup, pond cleanup. A lot of communities do an adopt a park, adopt a pond, something like that. And one thing I would like to throw out there is that you have very good opportunities for this right outside here in Heritage Park. You know, we recently completed all the stormwater improvements along the east side of the park, and this is an educational opportunity. If you would like, I volunteered to this summer do a walking tour of the site to really explain what's going on out there, why these things are the way they are, why the vegetation is what it is. So we can discuss that in the future, but it's an opportunity to meet this minimum control measure. The next one is the IDDE, which is the Illicit Discharge Detection and Elimination. Mike mentioned we recently adopted an ordinance to cover this. But what this really is just looking for sources of pollutants that should not be entering our waterways. The first item on this is to come up with a map of where all of the village's storm sewers outlet to the streams. This includes ditches, but basically anything that would convey storm water from any part of the village and concentrate it to a point at a stream, we need to know where those are. The reason why we need to know where they are is that under this, we need to go out and visit them periodically while it hasn't rained for a period of 7 days ahead of time. That will let us know that it hasn't rained, but there's water coming out of here. Is it supposed to be coming out of here? Is there a possible cross-connection with someone's sewage line or something like that? But this is a way to really just go around and verify that what's coming out of those pipes is actually just stormwater. All right. So we got a few examples of things that we look for, and these are actually photos that I've taken. This is an example of paint on a storm sewer catch basin. As I said, public education is really important. This happened when my car was parked right next to it. I had a HR Green construction vehicle there. We had plenty of village staff. This is not in Homer Glen. But a resident was painting their house, and throughout the course of the day, they went and did it while all these people are around. I'm pretty sure that indicated that they didn't know they were doing something wrong. So it just goes back to educating the public about where this actually goes. Another example is fertilizer. This was a case I was walking my dog and saw that it looked like someone had probably fertilized their lawn, had a little bit extra left over, and figured, I'm just going to dump it down the drain. They probably didn't know that that's extremely harmful to our waterways. So wrapping things up, going back to the education, so this is the type of thing that we would look for. The next one is construction site stormwater runoff control. This has to do with reviewing building permits and really just enforcing erosion control on construction sites. Typically, the main source of pollution from a construction site is sediment. The sediment that's produced from a construction site is typically 10 to 20 times more damaging to water than what would come off of an agricultural field that was recently tilled. The reason for that is that construction sites are exposing the clay that is underneath our topsoil. Topsoil that farmers are tilling up is typically a little bit tackier. It doesn't run off as readily. And if it does, it doesn't carry through the stream for a long way. Clay from construction sites, when it hits waterways, it will carry for a very long time. And attached to that clay are nutrients, which further degrade waterways. A few other things to look out for on this type of stuff are if a large development has a fuel tank on site, is it leaking? Do they have paints, solvents, soaps, construction cleanouts like for concrete, that type of thing? They're all items that need to be just monitored and make sure that they're not getting into our storm sewer systems. This is very important for a village like Homer Glen. There's a lot of development going on, and this is something that it'll benefit you to continue to watch it as these developments come in. So we've got a few examples of failures, I guess, on construction sites. The left photo here is one where there was no silt fence installed. You can see a lot of sediment is leaving the site there. And actually, underneath that big pile of soil in the street is a storm sewer inlet. And if you follow where that pipe goes, you end up out in the woods in a little stream, and you can very clearly see that that sediment is working its way through the stream and definitely leaving the site. There's another example of a project that we're actually kind of working on right now, where there's a development site and no silt fence at all. And you can see that clay-laden water is leaving their property and then entering the storm sewer, where it becomes a problem for their neighbors. The big gist of this is that it is way easier to keep the sediment on site and just keep it in place. Once it leaves a site, it's very, very hard to clean up, and it can cost a lot of money if a substantial amount of sediment leaves. Another example of a site that at one time had a silt fence going around it. They were trying to keep all their stormwater on their site, but over time, it got knocked down. Now it's not really doing a whole lot of anything. This is the laser. And you can kind of see it right along the curb there, that all that black fabric is just falling down. This is an example. Again, these are photos that I've just taken throughout my job. An example of a spot where a major failure happened in someone's erosion control system. That's the picture of a confluence of two streams right there. On the left, you see what normal stream water looks like. On the right is the tributary that leads away from a development. That doesn't look good. You can see that it'd be harmful to fish. It's carrying lots of sediment, lots of nutrients, but it also is carrying a volume of soil. Now that soil settles out in our waterways, and hypothetically, if this is a floodplain or a floodway, that channel is then losing capacity to carry stormwater because you have mud entering it. Next time it rains, you're going to get more sediment coming in there, and eventually over time you lose the capacity of our streams, and then that can lead to flooding of adjacent properties. So it's more than just water quality, it's also keeping our conveyance ways open. All right, the next minimum control measure, I apologize, it's a little difficult to read on the screen, is post-construction stormwater management. This is something that, after working for the village for over 8 years personally, I know that you guys do a very good job of this. This is making sure that you have a setback from wetlands and streams, making sure that there are requirements for more than just doing stormwater detention, that you're thinking of stormwater quality, putting in a naturalized detention pond rather than just a turf grass detention pond. And also doing things that are going to ensure that these items are maintained into perpetuity, requiring HOAs to take over the maintenance of them, enforcing dormant SSAs and things of that nature. And last, sorry, I got a few photos for this. This picture on the left here is an example that I've seen basically for the past year or so. This was a residential development, and this house had been completed for about 6 months, and they still never planted the turf grass on it. And again, not in Homer Glen, I'm sure that this builder was asking to close out their permits. But as you can see here, they're not done. That site is not stabilized. You had a lot of soil leaving the site. We don't want sites that look like the one on the left. We want them that look like the one on the right. We've got clean water leaving them, and you've got full vegetation growing. The requirement's actually 70% of the site be seeded and fully maintained. Actually, there's requirements that during construction, if you're not using the site for a given amount of time, you're supposed to apply a temporary seed to prevent this from happening. So these are all things that are in the code, and they just, as long as they're enforced, will really help our waterways. Right. Last but not least, the last minimum control measure is pollution prevention and good housekeeping. So this one seeks to really improve our waterways and protect our ecosystem through the things that the village does on your own properties, on the streets, in the areas that you maintain. One portion of this includes annual training of employees who are doing basically anything that could potentially impair our waterways. Anyone who applies fertilizer, people who are mowing the lawns, maintaining the roads of any way. This would also extend to the road district employees who are helping to apply salt and things like that throughout the year. Salt actually is damaging to our waterways, so that becomes a pollutant under the system. As I mentioned with some of these other PMPs, is that the village is already doing a lot of this stuff. It's just that now we need to document it, keep track of it, and then every year when we do that annual update to the EPA, we need to just say, we did these items that we said we would do on these dates, and here's the proof for it. All right. So with that, I would like to thank you for the opportunity to speak and take any questions if you have any.
Anyone have any questions on it?
I do. When you monitor an inflow into the stream and you realize there's a problem there, and I mean, is there some enforcement or something? I mean, are you supposed to track that back and try and find out where it's at? And is there like a punishment for that, or is there just education?
So there is punishment for it. It again kind of varies in degree of whether it was being done maliciously on purpose or if it was someone who legitimately didn't know and can be just warned about it. But this does go back to that illicit discharge detection and elimination ordinance that was recently adopted. That provides an enforcement measure for the village. It also really lets you know how important it is to have a map of the storm sewer system. You know, because if you see something coming out of the pipe, you need to know what's all draining to that point. And the ordinance actually outlines how you go through and find that. An example I would like to give you is that one of our recent communities that we were working with, they were doing their dry weather screenings. They walked to an outfall that was going to a detention pond, and there was a milky water coming out of it, and kind of had a paint odor to it. So they followed that pipe because they had a map. They went to the next uphill manhole. They were able to trace where it was coming from, and there was actually an industry that was doing painting. And they were cleaning out all their tools, and it was going down the storm drain, and they caught them red-handed. But again, they weren't doing it thinking they were doing anything wrong. This is where the whole program comes together, is educating them. You know, most people, they like to swim, they like to go fishing, they like to enjoy nature. Generally, people are not bad in purposely dumping harmful pollutants down their drains. So, you know, it has to do with just code enforcement and kind of playing it how it goes.
You educated me a lot. Not only do I feel bad for the chickens and the bees, I feel bad for the water system. So I am not going to sleep tonight. But I am glad that you did come out, and I'm happy that you're going to come out to a public meeting and discuss all this too. There'll be a lot of tears in the audience, I'm sure.
Thank you. Right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay. This one we have is presentation and discussion of regarding the proposed Caton Farm, Bruce Road, SRA route, including the selection of one of three proposed alignments between I-33 and 159th Street. Mike, who's you doing this one?
Yes. There's been a long need, I think everybody kind of realizes there's been a long need for another bridge across the Des Plaines River. You know, right now you have basically 159th Street going through Lockport, going north. The next one is 135th Street going south. It's quite a ways away, so traffic has definitely been building on the 159th Street Bridge. And in general, traffic throughout Will County has been building. So they've been not only looking for another bridge over the river, but also another east-west corridor that basically would carry some of that traffic, that additional traffic that's been building. In 1999, March of 1999, the Transportation Corridor Committee, which is the TCC committee, was created to begin the study of an east-west transportation corridor through the central portion of Will County. And then, of course, it included the new bridge across the Des Plaines River. Through the years, there's been multiple different route options that have been brought forward. And for whatever reasons, after they've been studied, they've been kind of declined, and then additional, like I said, additional routes. One of the things that, as part of what they call the SRA Strategic Regional Arterial Roadway, is, and this goes back to the funding, the federal funding that they're seeking to get for this, but is they seek basically terminus points for this road. So ultimately there were studies done, and this goes back to, you know, the early 2000s, and ultimately the terminus points that were selected for this potential, what's called the Caton Farm Bruce Road SRA route, was basically Caton Farm, and then on the west end and 159th Street, basically at Cedar Road on the east end. So the goal is basically to carry the traffic from the one terminus point to the other terminus point. So throughout the process, like I said, there's been multiple different routes that have been studied. There's been issues with where the bridge was located, going due to the Heinz Emerald Dragonfly. There's a habitat down in that area. It's an endangered species. So there were certain locations that couldn't be used. There's certain height restriction requirements if they do put the bridge in those locations. So, like I said, there's been multiple different routes. And there's multiple communities, as you see in the supplement sheet. Basically, it's Crest Hill, Homer Township, Lockport Township, Lockport, Joliet, Plainfield Township, Will County, Homer Glen, and New Lenox. So basically all of these communities, because this road is going to affect all of these communities in one way or another. So they're part of that TCC committee, and basically they're the kind of the groups that have been deciding and voting on which alignments would be preferred. In 2009, they settled on 3 different alignments for the road. Pretty much the differences in the alignment were mostly on the east end, and that was basically Cedar Road, what they call the middle alignment, and then Gower Road. At that time, the TCC members had voted, and they selected what was the middle alignment ultimately. And there's kind of an exhibit which the 11 by 17 exhibit shows the Gower Road, the middle alignment, and then the Cedar Road. So ultimately, that alignment, the middle alignment, was selected by the TCC committee, but at the time that was selected, Homer Glen, we had chose not to vote on that because at the time there were already resolutions that the village board had passed that they didn't want anything to bring any traffic to 159, basically to 159th and Cedar Road. So we refrained from voting that, but the other members of the committee had voted, and ultimately this was going to be the route that was going to be moved forward. Moving forward quite a few years, probably about 2 to 3 years ago, there was kind of a new push as to this east end of what alignment was going to be actually preferred. The issue really came about as the eastern members of the TCC committee, primarily Homer Glen, Homer Township, and Lockport, really were more, I guess, concerned that the rest of the TCC committee, really the members that were west of the river, were actually making, voting and making determinations on what was going to occur pretty much in our area. So ultimately, a new study after various meetings with the TCC, with the Will County, ultimately it was agreed that really a new look to which alignment in this area would be selected. So Lockport, because there was extra costs involved with this restudy, there was an intergovernmental agreement between the village, the Homer Township, and Lockport to kind of pay for an initial study to reevaluate the 3 different alignments in this area. And then ultimately, depending on which alignment is selected, there's obviously going to be costs to change the engineering. Lockport has agreed to pay for those costs because primarily they would actually benefit the most depending on if there's a different alignment chosen. So what's going forward now is again, there's basically a new look on whether Cedar Road would be the one selected, the middle alignment, which was already selected, but whether that would still be, remain as one of the options, or whether Gowder Road would be selected. Each one has obviously benefits and pros and cons. Cedar Road, one of the things, obviously, there's 2 schools on Cedar Road, so this new heavier traffic roadway would actually be going right in front of 2 schools. One of the issues with the middle alignment is obviously it was cutting through a large area of undeveloped property, so obviously that would have potential negative impact on how that property can develop. And also, it was going behind one of the schools that was also located on Cedar Road. And then, of course, Gowder Road, there's existing homes there, so they're going to need to acquire additional right-of-way. So there is an impact potentially on the homes there too. But of the 3 alignments that are basically in this area, 2 of them, Cedar Road and Gowder Road, are already, there's already existing right-of-way. They may have to acquire additional right-of-way, but there's already existing roads there and existing right-of-way. And then again, as the middle alignment, that would be the one that potentially, that would require all new right-of-way. So I think several of the trustees had, and the mayor had attended a recent public meeting at the Lockport Township High School, which basically was a presentation to kind of explain the 3 new alignments, or these 3 existing alignments, excuse me, the Cedar Road, Middle Road, and middle alignment, and Gowder Road. And basically what's required is now these 3 communities, Homer Glen, Homer Township, and Lockport, need to basically come up with kind of a consensus of which alignment do they want to move forward with, going, and then once that's selected, then ultimately, if it's different than the middle alignment, then the county will initiate the changes for the actual plans, and then ultimately, they would like to close out what they call the phase 1, so the initial study of this roadway. It's something that it's going to be quite a while before it's ever built, but it's something that needs to, these decisions need to be made now. So what we're basically the point of the presentation here is just to kind of explain what those routes were, and then seek the board's input as to which of the 3 alignments is the preferred alignment that they would like to see carried forward.
Are you asking for our opinion?
Correct.
Okay. Our consensus. I did go to that meeting, and I did talk to quite a few people there. One alderman in particular, she said that I just gave away who it was, had said that the Lockport is more or less pushing for the road to be Cedar, because a lot of the aldermen live on Gowder. I'm sorry?
They just approved Gowder.
They did, Lockport did. Oh.
I
I'm a Gowder too. I'm a Gowder. I'm done.
Okay, I have a question. Is the Will County Economic Development Director ever weighed in on this? Because it seems like Gowder is becoming a de facto frontage road to 355 for all of those concrete warehouses that are going up from 143rd all the way to 163rd. And I'm glad to hear that Lockport has approved Gowder, because that kind of fits in with what they've been impacting along that area. Mm-hmm. But I was wondering if John Brulin from the Will County CD, I can't remember exactly what they call it, but they're the ones that are pushing for all that trucking. Are they in favor of Gowder, or do we know if they've expressed an opinion?
I don't know if they've really expressed anything, and they've kind of, like I said, they've left it up to that TCC committee to decide what the preferred route was, and then kind of, because of the change on maybe not going with the middle alignment and the concerns that, like I said, that the western communities were making the decisions for our area. So they basically left that decision really up to kind of the Homer Glen, Homer Township, and Lockport to decide, what do we prefer. And I believe it would go back to the TCC committee for a final vote, and then, like I said, then potentially if the route does change, then the plans would need to be revised.
The only other question I have is that the terminus point, the eastern terminus point, is 159th and Cedar. So if the Gowder Road alignment were chosen, Is that still considered the terminus point? Or do they move that over to wherever the terminus is?
It'll basically, it'll still be considered the same terminus point. I mean, obviously 159th Street is under construction now, so at the time that this road would be constructed, most likely what would happen is they'd still consider that the point, but obviously most likely there's not going to be need to, yeah, that's already going to be constructed. So obviously they would have to reconstruct the Gauger Road intersection with 159th Street. But yeah, basically that same terminus point would still be what was considered.
Well, I agree with Trustee Trachey. I was at that meeting also. I heard people talking about both alignments. I never really heard anybody express any interest in the middle alignment because it was going to take way too much farmland, too much money, all of that.
Displace way too many people.
Right. And so, you know, for me, if it comes down to which one is less impactful, I think it's Gallagher because of the fact that we do have 2 schools on Cedar, as well as the fact that Gallagher is already being impacted, that whole area, by things that are certainly out of our control. And I think it just makes logical sense that Gallagher is, you know, becomes that. I don't like it, you know, I'm not advocating the truck traffic over there. I'm just saying this is the reality, and you know, you do have 355 just 1,000 feet to the west of these people in most cases, and you know, those truckers are just going to continue to not take 355 to go from 143rd to 159th, pay $9 or more in tolls and get off. You know, if they're only picking up a partial load at 143rd in Gallagher and then heading up to 163rd, I mean, the reality is they're just going to keep doing it. You know, they're on time constraints, they're on budgetary constraints. Everything's about the dollar nowadays, and everybody's looking to commoditize everything. So truckers are really being squeezed as far as how much money they are getting. So if they look for a way to, you know, optimize how they're getting around by not paying tolls, they're going to continue to use Gallagher. So again, I don't really like it, but it is the reality. So my opinion would be Gallagher. So
I concur with everyone else.
Trustee Gray, if this ends at 150, I agree with Gallagher because I attended that meeting as well. I talked to several of the aldermen there, and after they were explaining what their feelings were, I felt Gallagher had to be the most logical choice of it. But you're talking about 143rd in going to 159th to Gallagher. This is supposed to terminate at 159th.
Right, I'm just saying that the reality is these people are already, these truckers are already doing it. We know we've talked to some homeowners along Gallagher, and you know, I mean, it's just that because of those facilities that are all along there, you know. So,
and I agree with you.
Can I just chime in, just a comment? I mean, if we're realistically saying they're coming east on Bruce, they're not going to pass Gallagher to go to a Cedar or the middle alignment when they need to go north on Gallagher. I mean, they're just not going to do it. They're going to take their chance and break the law. So it makes sense for it to go.
One thing to also consider is the tollway actually does have property at Bruce Road for a potential interchange, for a future interchange. So, you know, whenever that gets constructed, obviously the SRA route here would actually cross at that location. So, you know, so that is a potential for any, you know, traffic, including truck traffic, to, you know, if they're looking to try to get to 355, they're certainly going to, you know, probably access it at that point rather than trying to get, you know, go back up to 159th Street.
And then they could also eliminate the toll booth there. Because they're only going a mile to get up to 159th Street. And it would definitely, it would make everything cleaner. They're not chopping up anything. They're going to eventually put the bridge up there in the first place. So I agree. It's, right now, Gallagher's the best choice. So consensus is Gallagher? Okay, so we've got our answer for Lockport.
What we'll do is we'll bring this back probably at the next meeting or so to make a formal vote on it. If there's any questions, then obviously please let me know.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Mike. Is there any old business? Is there any new business? We don't have anything for executive session tonight, but in 2 weeks for executive session, I would like to go through the rest of the meetings that we've had, both for the executive session and for it's something we need to get done before we do the next change. So I would like to, we don't have, so, all right. So if we could just make note of executive session for next meeting, so that we can so we can finish up with all the executive session minutes, and we can finish up with this year's minutes. You all okay with that?
Yes, sir.
Okay, I need a motion to adjourn.
I so moved.
I will second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries, meeting adjourned.